Hello everyone and welcome to the course. This is the first content-based lecture in a multi-part series introducing the foundations of bioethics. This course is designed for students from all majors, so you do not need any prior background in philosophy, ethics, biology, or healthcare to succeed. My assumption going into this course is that most of you have thought about right and wrong before, but may not have had the opportunity to study those questions in a structured or academic way. That is exactly what we will be doing together in this course. The first part of this course focuses on ethics as a field of study and how ethics applies specifically to questions about life, health, medicine, and science. In today's lecture, we are going to lay the groundwork by answering some basic but very important questions. What is ethics? What do we mean by moral conflict? And what exactly is bioethics? You'll notice that the second slide in every lecture outlines the learning objectives. Think of this second slide as a roadmap. It will tell you what to pay attention to and what you should be able to do by the end of the lecture. So let's go ahead and take a look. Following this lecture, you should be able to define ethics, differentiate between the terms right and correct, discuss the relationship between moral conflict and ethics, and define bioethics. Let's start with the basics. Simply stated, ethics is the academic study of morality. It is sometimes called moral philosophy. Morality refers to our ideas about right and wrong, good and bad, and how people ought to act. Ethics, then, is a systematic way that we examine those ideas. At its core, ethics asks questions like, what makes an action right or wrong? How should we treat other people? What kind of person should I try to be? Unlike math or chemistry, ethics does not just ask what is the case, it asks what ought to be the case. There are two major branches of ethics. The first is normative ethics. Normative ethics focuses on rules, principles, or guidelines of how people should act and what kind of character they should develop. Normative ethics tries to answer questions like, what should I do? What kind of person should I strive to be? In other words, normative ethics is about guidance. It helps us think through how we should behave in real-life situations. The second branch is metaethics, which is a little bit more abstract. Metaethics asks questions about where our moral ideas come from and what they mean. For example, is something right because people agree it is right? Or is it right regardless of what anyone thinks? Are moral values universal, or do they depend on culture or circumstance? You're not going to be expected to master these abstract debates right away, but it's important to know that ethical disagreements often exist because people start from different assumptions about these deep and complex questions. At this point, I want to pause and clarify something important. In everyday conversation, people use the words right and correct as if they mean the same thing. But in ethics, they are not the same. When something is correct, it means it is factually accurate or verifiable. For example, in basic arithmetic, 2 plus 2 equals 4. That is correct regardless of opinion. When something is right, however, we are making a moral claim. We are saying that an action is what someone ought to do. Ethical questions are not just about facts. They are about values, responsibilities, and judgment. In bioethics, we often have all the correct medical facts, but still disagree about what is the right thing to do. Ethics begins when we ask how to use information wisely and responsibly. Thus, ethics has two main tasks, and we're going to practice both of these in this course. First, ethics examines ethical theories, organized ways of thinking about morality. These theories offer different perspectives on how to decide what is right and what is wrong. Second, ethics applies those theories to real-world situations. This is called applied ethics. Applied ethics asks questions like, what should be done in this situation? Who is responsible? Whose interests matter? And how much? Bioethics is a form of applied ethics. When people have different ethical beliefs, disagreement is unavoidable. This brings us to the concept of moral conflict. Moral conflict occurs when individuals or groups disagree about what is right or wrong because they hold different beliefs about values, authority, or human nature. For example, some people believe that certain actions are always right or always wrong, no matter the situation. Others believe that context, culture, or individual choice should determine what is right and wrong. These disagreements often go much deeper than a single issue. They reflect broader differences in how people understand truth, authority, and the purpose of human life. You will see throughout this course that bioethical debates, such as end-of-life decisions, reproductive technologies, genetics, and access to healthcare, are rarely just about procedures. They're about conflicting moral worldviews. Now, I've been using the term bioethics. Let's define bioethics, which is sometimes referred to as healthcare ethics. The word bioethics comes from two Greek roots, bios meaning life, ethos meaning character or moral custom. Bioethics is the application of ethical thinking to questions involving life, health, medicine, and the biological sciences. More specifically, bioethics examines ethical issues that arise in healthcare and medicine, in scientific research, in public health and health policy. Bioethics includes areas such as clinical ethics, research ethics, and organizational ethics. It addresses questions about patient dignity, decision-making, rights, responsibilities, fairness, access to care, and justice. Even if you never work in healthcare, bioethics is going to impact you as a patient, a family member, a voter, and a participant in society. Wherever medicine, technology, law, and moral disagreement intersect, we will find bioethics. As we move forward in this course, you will see that bioethics is less about finding easy answers and more about learning how to think carefully, respectfully, and critically about difficult and important questions. In the next lecture, we will begin exploring ethical theories in more detail and start building the tools you will be using throughout this course.